All right, so part 3 of chapter 9. We will start with the world's ugly duckling. Things are going to go from kind of bad to even worse as we descend into the anarchy that we remember as the Articles of Confederation, and then we will probably by the end of this section, we will get up to our first constitutional, our convention to create a new constitution, as we realize that the Articles of Confederation just is not going to work. Now, sort of being the world's ugly duckling, just sort of looking at America and where we stand in the initial days and years on the world stage. Britain, who even after the defeat, if you want to call it a defeat at the hands of the Americans, even though it was really more of just a ceasefire, if you will, England is still going to refuse to send a minister to America. They're basically going to ignore us when it comes to trade. In terms of a commercial treaty, there's no revocation of the navigation laws. So if you do want to trade with Britain, you're not protected by any commercial agreement, and you're still subject to those taxes that were imposed through the navigation laws. They're not going to trade. They're not going to participate in trade as regard to the West Indies. So there's no more trade with our neighbors to the south in terms of those rich sugarcane islands. They're also going to try to. You're also going to see them try to annex parts of Vermont, into Canada, and they're also going to maintain fur trade with the Native Americans through their different trading posts along our soil. Things don't get any better when we start looking at relations with Spain. They're going to be even more openly hostile to our new government. They're basically going to continue to control the Mississippi River, which our pioneers are going to use to ship their produce, so that they're going to levy taxes and customs and duties along the Mississippi. They're also not going to allow us to cross the river. That's effective 1784. They're going to claim large areas in what is now Texas, sort of in that northern portion of the Gulf of Mexico, Texas, and what is now Oklahoma and Arizona. They're going to team up with Indians to try to keep Americans east of the Appalachians. They're going to encourage Native Americans to engage in raids and attacks and so forth on American outposts. And America can't even really control the better half of the territory that they've acquired due to Spanish and British hostilities. And France, which was America's friend, helped America win, again, quote unquote, the revolution. Now that they've gotten their aims, now that Britain is sort of humbled by their quote defeat at the hands of the Americans, France is not going to be as warm as they had been before. North African pirates are going to ravage American commerce in the Mediterranean. France is going to be of no help in that regard. Now, France also, in addition to having humbled Great Britain, they're also now getting ready to engage in what historians know as the French Revolution. So they've got their own problems. But at the end of the day, without the help of France, we find ourselves way too weak to fight pirates that threaten our shipping, and we don't have enough money to pay off the bribes necessary to get the help that we need. We're really not in a good spot internationally. However, we've got our own problems at home to deal with. And it's striking to me that a lot of times students will like the idea of total anarchy, And if you want to see what happens in the event of total and complete anarchy, you need to look no farther than what happens in response to in response to the Articles of Confederation, because the Articles of Confederation just allow us to spiral down into a state of anarchy. Again, that system, quote unquote, of raising tax money, which didn't really exist to begin with, really starts to show itself in the mid 1780s. Our public debt is growing because of interest. We don't have any tax money to pay that off. States instead are they're raising their own tax money in order to bolster their coffers, but they're really not giving anything back to the national government. And states, because they have, per the Articles of Confederation, the ability to print their own money, they're printing depreciated paper money, and we'll talk a little bit about that in class on probably Friday. We've already talked a little bit about inflation. We'll talk about depreciation a little bit on Friday. And all of this leads to a lot of grumbling, a lot of tensions here at home, and it kind of comes to a head in this thing that's called Shays' Rebellion, which the gist of which is we have these impoverished farmers who cannot pay their bills. Banks are foreclosing on their farms, and they've had enough, and they decide to voice that opinion. Led by a guy named Daniel Shays, they demand that the state of Massachusetts begin to issue paper money, which Massachusetts at this point did not issue paper money, that they lighten taxes, that they suspend property takeovers. They have a pretty sizable force for the time, a few hundred that attempt to enforce their demands. And the Massachusetts authorities respond in proper fashion, I suppose, for the day, by raising an army and basically demanding that they disband and that they start paying their taxes. There's a series of small skirmishes. The rebels, if you want to call them that, the Shayites or Shaysites, actually at one point take over a courthouse. 3 of them are killed, though. There's another one that's wounded, and the movement basically collapses after that. However, the damage has already been done. Massachusetts had tried to enlist the help of other states. Other states said basically, you created this problem, you need to handle it. So they don't get a lot of help there. Massachusetts tries to pass some debtor relief laws, but basically this was the greatest fear. This is that 3,000 tyrants 1 mile away rearing its ugly head, and this is where we begin to see people calling for a stronger central democracy or a stronger central government, because we don't need anarchy. We don't need what is called mobocracy, where basically the masses rule by fear and chaos. We're looking for something maybe that's a little more organized. So how bad are things really under the Articles? Well, Shays' Rebellion obviously is not good. Conservatives, though, in order to try to protect their wealth, they are going to exaggerate things a little bit, because they want a more muscular central government to kind of protect their wealth. Now, as sort of self-serving as that is, both sides, on both sides of the fence, when it came to the Articles of Confederation, agreed that it needed strengthening. The central government needs to be stronger. But there is some pretty severe disagreement into how much these powers should be increased. The economy does improve a little bit towards the end of the 1780s. Had this happened maybe a little bit earlier in the game, we might have seen the Articles last a little bit longer than what they actually do. But at the end of the day, the Articles were really doomed from the start. they didn't provide a firm framework for the states to operate in. They didn't provide any way for the central government to pay off our debts. It was doomed from the start. So we have a convention of what Thomas Jefferson calls demagogues. The states send delegates to Annapolis, Maryland in 1786, and it originally starts with, we need to deal with commercial disputes. Now, 9 states are going to appoint delegates, only 5 are going to attend. Alexander Hamilton is going to actually get them to call for a meeting in Philadelphia. He basically looks around and says, this is kind of a little pathetic. We're not going to get anything accomplished here. So basically, we need to regroup in a year and just rework the whole Articles of Confederation. And eventually, the Congress agrees to this for the sole and express purpose of revising the Articles. Each state is going to send a representative or representatives to this convention in 1787, except for Rhode Island. And Rhode Island is going to become kind of a thorn in everybody's side here very, very quickly. 55 emissaries. Emissaries are just representative from those 12 states are going to come together May 25th in 1787. Now, it's interesting to note that these sessions were held in complete secrecy. They're going to post armed sentinels at the doors. Only those that have a certain level of access are allowed in. This is not a public proceeding. This is very much something that's held in secrecy. Jefferson, again, is going to call these people demagogues. And when you really think about some of the people that are there, you've got Thomas Jefferson, you've got Alexander Hamilton, you've got George Washington, you've got Benjamin Franklin. These really and truly are some of the most prominent people in our nation's history. And it is kind of humbling to think, what would it have been like to be in that room? I mean, these are some of the, and those are just the highlights. That's not every name. This really and truly is a meeting of the American political gods, as it were. James Madison, who's another one, I'm not sure if I even mentioned him. Jefferson, John Adams, Thomas Paine. These guys are, this is just an incredible collection of individuals. Madison is going to eventually be the guy who becomes known as the father of the Constitution because so many of his ideas end up making it into the Constitution. Hamilton has a very, very important role when it comes to advocation. He is going to advocate for a very, very powerful central government. Not all of his ideas end up in the Constitution, obviously, but some of them do. He is also one of the central figures in getting the Bill of Rights placed, and we'll get to that, sort of the great compromise of the Bill of Rights. He's one of those central figures that actually is going to advocate for the addition of a Bill of Rights so that we can get this Constitution passed, but we'll get to that in a minute. As I noted, Jefferson, John Adams, and Thomas Paine are all in Europe, but imagine that room if those guys are there. I mean, it's just incredible. Samuel Adams and John Hancock, this gives you another indication as to how prestigious this group is. Samuel Adams and John Hancock, two of the foremost leaders in the Revolution, were not even elected as representatives to this. Patrick Henry is elected, but he declined, saying that he smells a rat. Patrick Henry, if you'll remember, give me liberty or give me death, should not be all that unsurprising that he doesn't want to give a ton of power to a large central government. But the time has come to go ahead and just get this thing done and come up with a more solid and practical political system. And that's what we'll get into in, I believe this would be part 4, and that'll be the time when we start getting into the particulars of what these guys are going to hammer out.